Hello, everyone. Come on into the webinar today. It's great to see you. I see people flowing in. We have somewhere between 50 and 100 people registered for today's event. I'm Chris Gloede from Ricochet, and I have my co-researcher and co-presenter with me today.
I'm Beth Power from Altai.
Great to see you all. I see people flowing in. We have, looks like already broke 20 attendees. Thanks to everybody that's attending and showing up. You're not playing that favorite trick that I have, which is register for the webinar and then wait for the recording. You are here for the live show, which means you'll also see all of our flubs that I edited out in the recording. Oh, looks like we have 29 people joining us right now, Beth. Maybe we're going to break 30 by the end of today, but that would be great. Usually you get about 50% of the registrants showing up for the live broadcast. And just a reminder to everybody that that no matter whether you attend or not today, you will get a recording and you will get a copy of the report we discuss. So I am also going to take us live here, or not. I think actually we're not going to go live today, Beth. So
That's fine.
Like I told you, it's live TV and you never know what's going to happen. Beth, tell me, can you see our slide presentation?
I can, full screen.
All right, great. So everyone, thank you so much for joining. And Beth, we broke 30. We have 32 people joining us today. That's great. We were going live. We've had a little technical glitch. The fun thing about live streaming is it works for us about 70% of the time. So don't you worry, the folks that are joining us today, we're going to get you a recording. It's my pleasure to be joining you. I am the chief consultant for Ricochet. We are a company that does marketing, membership, and meeting transformations, and that always includes some element of technical transformation. Increasingly, that's the bigger portion of a project. And my co-presenter and researcher is here. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Beth Power. I'm the Senior Technical Marketing Manager at Altai Systems. I bring background in IT and marketing, so a nice sort of across the board experience to work with Chris on this paper and the webinar you're seeing right now.
And Beth and I have worked together for many years, not just as consultants, but also as association executives, and we've done many technology transformations. That background was really interesting to us as we put together this report. So much has changed in the 20 years that we've been doing this. And if you go right now, well, you don't need to go. You people that are joining us right now, you're going to get an email that delivers a link so you don't have to download this report. But if you're interested and you want to share this with others, you can give them this handy dandy shortcut on the bottom, which is ricochetadvice.com/ecosystem report. This report covers a lot of the details that we are kind of sharing high level in today's webinar. You'll be able to go deeper into the information that we have. And it has our contact information there as well. So you can always reach out to either Beth or myself. So let's go ahead and plug ahead. So our research was informed by 17 interviews. That's interviews with 17 executives from associations, from specialty solution providers, and from AMS solution providers. And 17 may not sound like a lot, but it was 17 interviews. And then it was follow-up conversations after we made it through all of them. And then it was follow-up emails. So I think that we got a really nice broad landscape perspective on what's happening with the association tech stack here in COVID and post-COVID times. Beth, do you want to make any comments about that interview experience?
So I definitely learned a lot, and I really sort of appreciate the association sort of philosophy of the sharing of information and how the partnerships that associations and association providers really want to sort of help one another. It's just such a great community to be a part of.
Yeah. So, and it was also interesting to me as we went through those interviews that the community is maybe a little smaller than what we thought. So you and I both rolled into it thinking that it was a pretty broad landscape, especially around the specialty solution providers. And when we sat down to document it, we realized that the number of solution providers that kind of complement AMS providers and integrate with those AMS solutions and specialize in the association space, well, the list is not really all that long. So I remember you making the comment and saying out loud what I was thinking. And later on, Beth is going to share with everybody a kind of the top line list of the big players in the space. So we're going to give you our cheat sheet so that you can, you don't have to go out there and figure out who the specialty providers are. You can take a look at our list. All right, so jumping ahead then, we have a lot of information that we discovered in this conversation. And like I mentioned, Beth and I have decades of experience in the space, and we've both seen a transition. When we both started our careers, I would say it's true that there was a bit of a debate in tech philosophies, but it was heavily favoring one of these two models, and that's changed. So the two models tend to be, for like the full philosophical models tend to be that you want a single solution that can do everything. And traditionally in the AMS world, that is all about, in the association world, that's all about AMSs. And at the other end of the spectrum, you want to put together a constellation or an aggregation of specialty solutions that are really great at a particular function, and they integrate and work together in concert. And before, I'm going to take a breath here. I'm famous for talking too fast, number one, and for steamrolling over the comments. So I just took a look down here at the chat box. I'm going to ask Beth to take a look at the chat. Just follow the chat along. And Beth, you're going to have to steamroll over me, because I'm going to keep plowing on my slides. You tell me if there's anybody that I've missed or some good comments. I see greetings from Chicago. So we're both Chicago fans.
I have worked with you long enough that I have no problem steamrolling over you when necessary.
Actually, I recall that should not be an issue.
Right. But we do have people all the way from Edmonton, Canada. But really right now, it's just people are really excited about showing the diversity in location for people joining the webinar.
Oh, that's great. So actually, what we're saying is this is an international event.
International, I love
global. It's a global event.
Thank you, Edmonton. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, Ashley made it global. All right. So we have this philosophical debate, right? It's always for years and years, maybe even decades, been favoring the single solution, which was really your core AMS solution. And that did everything from online membership joins to meeting registrations to maybe e-commerce checkouts for your books or paid events for your and more. And then it's kind of off to the side was this option where, well, maybe you could augment your AMS with some specialty providers, but I would say, in 2010, let's just choose a year, there weren't that many specialty providers in the marketplace. And there was, in our maturity model, maybe people were more accepting of some more basic functionality. Oh, and talking about global, we just had somebody join from Germany, and coincidentally, just before we went live, Beth and I were talking about visiting Germany. So I think maybe Lisa is a plant, and I got to believe it's probably 8 p.m. in Germany. So Lisa, thanks for making time for us. Two philosophies, single solution, specialized solution. And what happened in the last few years is, number one, there was a real blossoming of specialized solutions that serve the association marketplace. And number two, there was COVID, and suddenly a big focus on the digital experience, especially for digital members. So what was traditionally a lopsided debate about these two philosophies became a much more even debate. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about the pros and cons of each. So on the side of the single solution, we have lower cost for sure. And so it tends to be that typically, I would say, and Beth can argue with me on this one, smaller associations kind of favor the single solution, the single AMS solution, because it is a lower cost. It's commonly lower cost than an AMS and integrated solutions around it. Also, it tends to be easier administration. You need to learn one software solution, and when you have a smaller staff and they have multiple duties that they need to juggle, well, one system to learn, it makes it easier for them. And generally the technology skills are more entry level. So after you install it, you don't have complex integrations to execute. You don't have issues around data integrity because you have a walled garden single solution. On the other side, the solutions that are specialized, they also bring pros to the table. Typically, it is superior functionality. So an organization or software company that's focused on one particular element of the experience, meeting registrations is my favorite example. Well, they get really honed in and they are really about optimizing that meeting experience. AMSs sometimes are not as honed in on that particular functionality. They have to cover a lot of functionality, so their roadmap isn't as frequently updating a particular feature. Also on the specialty side, they have shorter contractual commitments. And sometimes you say these are pros and cons, but whereas AMS solutions in the past tended to be longer agreements, specialized solutions sometimes are a year, sometimes they're month to month. So they've really embraced on the specialized side more of a SaaS model or a subscription mentality. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions on the AMS side. We're starting to see some of that flow through. I'm starting to see more periodic subscription models. And then on the specialized solution, this is a big change recently. They understand the importance to do their integrations and be integration friendly, especially with AMSs. So you'll see many of the association specialty solutions built with out-of-the-box functionality to work with a particular AMS, especially the popular ones. So the competing philosophies that were not much of a competition in 2010, suddenly in a post-COVID world with more robust solutions that are out there with a specialty functionality and an integration mindset, are making this a tougher choice. And I also should mention that this choice in the past was really with IT departments, but increasingly it spreads around the organization. And so what we saw in our conversations was a discussion that extended beyond the CIO to include membership departments and marketing departments and finance departments and meetings departments. And while not everybody articulated the different models in this way, what we also observed in our interviews and in our research was that people were kind of sitting at different points, and what we discovered was this general evolutionary scale. Now, just a comment about this evolutionary scale. When I say it's an evolutionary scale, I'm not saying that you are always trying to get to the end evolutionary step. It may be that your point in the scale is right in the middle, and it might be right in the middle. The right point for you might be at the end, it might be at the beginning. The trick is figuring out what's right for your organization and not to blindly charge ahead down that scale. So here's the scale again. It starts with monolith. This is the 2010 model. This is the single AMS solution that delivers nearly all of your functionality. The next step in the process is what we call the central model. So that AMS is still playing a very important role, still playing maybe the most important role in your tech stack. But around it, there might be a few pieces of functionality that aren't even integrated with that AMS. So Beth, I think you and I can both remember a time when we had a large AMS at an association we were working for, and there was a meeting registration system that sat essentially outside of that AMS. It wasn't integrated, and so we had a manual process to put contacts in and take contacts out. We went from a monolith to a central model. It was highly manual, but necessary to get some extra functionality. Integration was not really part of our conversation back at that time. Third in the scale is what we call orbits. So suddenly you start doing some of those integrations. Suddenly you're connecting some of those specialty solutions to the big pieces of your member or digital experience. One big piece is almost always your AMS. But here's a funny little twist. Maybe another big piece is your meeting registration system that's not connected to your AMS, but has bolt-ons or plugins to that meeting registration system itself. So you end up with these kind of dual suns or multiple moons all circling each other with some level of integration. You're also probably at this point starting to build some technical skills around integrations and APIs and data sharing. So this is often like kind of a first step. Not everything is integrated with everything. And then finally, at the end of the spectrum, we have what we call the hub model. And so the hub is not your AMS. That's what a lot of people might assume. But the hub is kind of this ethereal central point that's passing data around. So it's taking it from your AMS and sharing it to all the other endpoints solutions. And maybe your meeting registration and maybe your discussion forum, those are also collecting and sharing all of their information. to the AMS and other specialty solutions. So the hub is that intersection of all of that. Hub is the intersection of all of those lines. And I'm going off the screen share so I can show you what I can't very well describe. It's that vapor in the middle. So we see an evolution. Again, it's not from most important to least important. There are different models that are right for different types of organizations. And so I'm going to take a short breath here. And I think that I managed to shut down the conversation when I said hello to Lisa in Germany. I'm going to ask some people to lean into your chat and start asking some questions, or start arguing with us, or maybe adding your own support. Say, yeah, I got it. Or so Pete has a really good question. And maybe I'm going to let Beth take a crack at this first. Beth, do you want to take a crack at the question from Pete, or should I?
You can go ahead and take this one since you're
okay. Hot potato. You just saw it go around the room. So systems of record. I think that there's a new model. So there's maybe this is going to blow your mind. I think increasingly we have a primary system of record and then secondary systems of record. So the primary system of record maybe holds your core contact records, especially your members, but you might have other systems. So maybe, a system that's dear to my heart is the marketing automation systems or your email marketing systems. These may hold non-member data that is not released to the core AMS. There's a large data governance and data strategy piece of work that happens when you move into the heavily integrated models. You may have a philosophy that all data should be housed in at least your AMS. You may have a philosophy that says, we don't need to hold it all in there. Maybe there are expense reasons for it. Maybe there are other record completeness issues. So for example, typically an AMS requires an email address for a record. Well, maybe you don't have an email address for someone. So I would say you have systems, a primary system of record, and that doesn't actually hold all of your data.
And I think that Jennifer sort of follows or is asking the question that I would have then sort of tag teamed you on this one. So the fact that you might not use your AMS as your system of record, you might still want to have a data warehouse or data lakes to have a central repository though. And as more associations, I do think, are looking at warehouses or data lakes, I'm going to steal a line from Reggie Henry, which I will do later in the presentation as well. But Reggie Henry from ASAE talks about moving from a system of record to a system of action. And using that action might be that you're storing your data from multiple sources or using marketing automation as your system of action. And so I do think that all the data needs to sort of, you want to leverage all of your data, but it might not necessarily be all stored to Chris's point in your AMS. There are other ways to sort of connect your data.
That's great. And I see another technology expert, Kenji Davis, has joined us. So we always appreciate his input. And he says, look, I've seen this hub model called different names. I've seen it called the member data platform. And I've also seen that. I don't know that I've seen member data platforms out there, but I think this hub model is more descriptive of the entire connected ecosystem. I've seen member data platforms that become that primary system of record, but not necessarily describe how all of these are integrated together. And then John says, look, dude, after you start flowing all the data back into the AMS, you're just back to the monolith model. And I don't think that's quite right either. I think the monolith versus the hub model descriptions, we're talking about functionality, not really data. So we are integrating different functional or member experiences. So the data empowers those, but not necessarily but it is really meant to describe the tools or the solutions working together. And Kim actually brings something up that I've had a couple of recent debates about. So Kim says, isn't the ability to sync data in real time across associations the key to engaging members? And I still see plenty of associations that are working with nightly batch jobs. And honestly, Beth, this was your life and my life for years and years and years when we worked for a large association. But I agree with Kim that in fact, the real time is the way to go. And the example and the issue that I've recently been working on is we're talking about member batches between our AMS and a marketing automation system. I said, that's a no-go for me, because the minute somebody joins the association, a minute later, I need to start with the new member welcome stream or the new member welcome communications. And it is a big fail if I have to wait for a batch job overnight and then tomorrow send them welcome to my association email or welcome to your association. So I believe that Kim's nailed it, that the real-time data flow is almost a cost of entry, a basic need these days. So I'm doing a batch job fight with one of my clients at the moment. Beth, you and I haven't even talked about that. And it's not nobody we're working on together. All right, I'm going to jump back into the presentation, and I really appreciate all the comments coming from the people that are joining us. Beth, we have almost 40 people that have joined and logged in today. All right, so we've got some insights from our report. I'm actually going to pass the baton to Beth here.
So from the report, I think as we sort of look back now at sort of what are some of the 5 key points, Chris has touched on some of them. We'll just go a little bit more in depth here. So these advances to technology allowing for the more flexible decision making is allowing for easier integration or an easier sort of decision on which platform you get in the first place. So more configuration over customization, low code, no code philosophy, and sort of creating turnkey solutions really allows you to make decision making with your technology very flexible, and that's really a good plus for you. IT isn't always driving the change. So this was a point that Chris and I debated a lot when writing the paper. I come from both IT and marketing, but most recently had been in IT, and it was hard for me to sort of grapple with this. And it's because I don't think IT shouldn't be part of the discussion. But I do think what's really exciting is that marketing departments understand the importance of technology just as much as IT. And because of that, and because they're sort of bringing more solutions to the table, it allows the integration or the implementation or the decision making to be less siloed and more collaborative. So IT still definitely needs to be part of the discussion, in my biased opinion, but I think it's great that other departments are part of and leading the charge in some ways and can be change makers. But before you do any change, data strategy, we're talking about it, really needs to be more important than ever. In some cases, having a data warehouse or a data lake to store historical data so that you can see trends over time and look at monthly snapshots, that might be really important for you. And so making sure, though, that you're looking at how the data is going to sync together. So the fact that you are referring to one field in one system and a different field in another, you need to make sure you've got your strategy, because data integrity and data QC shouldn't sort of go by the wayside just because you are maybe using a hub model with multiple systems. Analytics are no longer a nice to have. The fact that we based so many of our decisions in the past on anecdotes just really doesn't fly today, because we've got so much data to support decisions, and it's easier to get to, and really you can sort of back up decisions with that data. And so you want to make sure that data is driving decisions and not the anecdote. I know that's easier said than done in an association world. I can relate, but whenever you can really back up your decisions with analytics, strongly encouraged. And really, I think what we have most learned are that associations are coming to this digital transformation era, by circumstance or desire. So digital transformation is the buzzword everyone's talking about, and COVID brought associations kicking and screaming in some cases, or really excited in others, because you had to adapt to a digital world. And now the technology is really there in so many association first tools that we'll show in a bit, to allow you to be in this digital transformation era. So COVID may have accelerated it, but I think we were going to get there anyway.
So I'm going to let the audience maybe argue with you a little bit about the role of IT. And so
great.
Actually, I'll start off with an argument. My perspective is that you should always use analytics to kind of bolster your perspective. But I do know that when I don't agree with the analytics, I try to come up with good anecdotes. So don't fall for that trick when somebody tries to start with analytics and move to anecdotes. We definitely are trying to get rid of those anecdotes. Now, Beth, I think that maybe nobody's arguing the fact that IT should be involved in the decision, but I
Sure.
wonder how many of us have participated in significant tech stack discussions where IT is not the lead for that discussion. So I would open it up to the people in the room here. Has anybody been part of a big initiative that maybe was led by a tech initiative that was led by marketing or membership or others? And I think we've got a few crickets. It's cicadas, actually. So if it's June 2021, it's cicadas, not crickets. Jennifer asked another good question, though. Can you expand on your definition of digital transition and how you see omni-channel capabilities becoming a reality? So I'm happy to discuss, tag that one. It kind of falls, I think, in the member experience and marketing space, and you can add in with me, Beth. So a lot of what my perspective is that many associations have damaged their email channel because they've essentially over-emailed to their members, and they've done siloed marketing, which means just everybody at the organization was sending emails. And so I advocate often for reclaiming that email channel by diminishing its importance for a while. And that means adding in paid media, adding in paid social, adding in text messaging, adding in phone calls, and diversifying out of the email only communication channel that so many associations have now. And in order to do that, you have to do integrations. So you're not going to be able to do it if you are any of the first two models. You have to be pushing in to the third and fourth models on that ecosystem. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And Beth, maybe you've been reading some of the comments, and I'll let you take it from here.
Sure. Kenji talked about how IT was second in command, but that he was in membership and marketing and was the leader on AMS implementation. So that's certainly nice to see that that's been happening and not IT just sort of leading every implementation or every sort of tech decision. Karen, though, brought up the fact that other departments have kicked off searches, but it's always been kicked back to IT to run the projects themselves. And as long as I think that IT is a partner and not the driving force, I think that that's a good way to make sure that it becomes a collaborative process and getting that buy-in sort of throughout the sort of process. Amber raised something about the data warehouse and should it be part of an AMS search for an RFP. And so this is where I think the discussion about real-time versus sort of real-time data exchange and real-time needs for your association. I agree with Chris. I think real-time data at this point, you need to sort of be reactive right away and understand how things are integrating right away. And so making sure your data is accessible immediately is important. I think depending on what your other reports are and what your other analytics are, having a warehouse should not exclude you from doing real-time marketing and real-time analytics as well. So I think that that should be part of sort of your data strategy discussion, because I think that there's still a need for, or can be a need for, a warehouse or a data lake, because maybe there's data you're not using right now, but that you'll want to in the future. Having snapshots and point in time comparisons, I think, is still useful. So I don't think that warehouses should not be part of the discussion, but I think that strategy needs to don't let warehouses be your only solution and become the driving force for your data rather than the only solution.
And Beth, you've mentioned data warehouses a couple of times, so I'm going to talk about what I call the shadow. So this was a case where we had to go back and talk to many of our interviewees because we had a clear understanding of the models that were used out there. And then right at the end of those conversations, somebody told us, well, for my analytics, of course, I don't put that through my hub. That's all run off to the side. Everything just dumps directly into it, completely breaking the model, and was only mentioned as kind of a last minute off the cuff remark. And so we went back and talked to many people. And as I've been working through other projects, it's become even more clear to me that that data warehouse that often is storing the data for analytics is a repository of much more data than what you typically use for transactional or marketing communications. And so I do think that in the dark corner of your tech strategy, something that people rarely talk about is this data warehouse that's sucking in a lot of information for your analytics, your dashboard solution. And then kind of after you and I, Beth, got our hands around like this exception to the rule, if you were doing your ecosystem, we discovered, well, there's also a second scenario that is another shadow, and that is search. So if you're doing federated search, which is pulling search for across many different content sources, that also needs to be pumped into some solution. And that is also a lot more than the common data that's getting shuffled around from specialty solution to specialty solution. So you end up with another little lake in another dark corner of also never discussed really in detail in your tech strategy. So we think that I still think that there's evolutionary steps to be had, because I don't think that we've come up with quite a pure play model that fits this philosophy of everything working together and just passing data as needed. We're still pumping data into pools kind of in the back resources. And I found it very interesting that after we got through all of these philosophical conversations with everybody, nobody copped to it except one person. And then we had to go back and everybody was like, oh yeah, of course, that's how it works. We don't port that data around. All right, back to you, Beth.
So we've been talking about this chart for a bit. So it doesn't matter where on the spectrum you fall, whether or not you're sort of all-in-one monolithic solution, a single solution, or the specialized hub solution. It's unlikely that your solution will meet every single one of your needs. So at some point, in some way, where you might have one integration or multiple integrations, and those integrations will likely be to a specialized solution. So I think what's really exciting, so I think I initially thought there's no way we can include this chart in our paper because it's going to be overwhelming, too many solutions. And so to Chris's point, I was really worried about this page. And then we saw that it's a much smaller market than we thought. That's because we really focused on those vendors that are association first. So there are lots of solutions out there for, let's say, event management, but they might not be focused on association first, which they might have. We have unique needs. Associations are far more similar than we like to believe, in the sense of a lot of associations have a lot of the same needs, but we're also much more unique to the corporate world than you sort of realize as well. And so focusing on vendors that appreciate that association first philosophy, I think is really important. And here's where I'm going to steal from Reggie Henry again from ASAE. He likes to talk about his vendors as his partners and an extension of his staff. So whatever solution you look for, you really should be looking for vendors who you want to form a partnership with, because that's really where you're going to sort of get the best value out of your tool, because you've partnered with them so that you can create the right integration, that you can understand, they can understand your business and understand the systems that need to work together. So whether or not you're looking at analytics with Association Analytics, or you're looking at Blue Sky for your LMS, or Higher Logic for your communities, and I won't list all of them, but whichever sort of association specialized solution you work with, I think that you really want to make sure that you're looking for a partner for your business, for your association rather.
So I'm putting this slide back up. I am certain that there are still software providers, specialty solution providers that we missed. And I'm going to invite our attendees here today. We have now over 40. We broke the 40 mark, Beth, to lean into their computer and type in a couple of the providers that we did not include here. So do you know, people attending the webinar right now, do you know solution providers that specialize in the association space that are not listed here? And we did we took a shortcut. We said for the AMSs, wow, there are so many. We're just going to say it's too many to list. But I'm curious to know what obvious ones we missed. We're always looking to improve our research, improve our paper. So I see a LMS system from Community Brands. Oh, yeah, this is interesting. So Ashley says, look, we do custom application development. So they're not on here because we build them unique to our association. I would say that that's not, I'm confident that Ashley is not in a small association. And I think it's good. We're not seeing a whole lot of people telling us, Tony says chapter manager. So I don't know that tool. So that's something that he's saying, yeah, Chris, you and Beth missed this one on the list. I think that we got most of the big players, and thank you to Tony and, oh, I see Omnipress for abstract managers. So the nice thing about Zoom is, Beth, you and I are going to have this list from the chat record after we log off. So we'll be able to go through here.
And someone just mentioned HubSpot.
Yeah, so of course, I'm a big fan of HubSpot, but HubSpot's not on this list because they do not specialize in the association space. They are not focused on the association industry. And we are trying to put together a good record, a good library of providers that specialize in the association industry. And I'm seeing a couple of more come through, especially also with a couple of familiar names. Hello, Meg Palumbo. Thank you for joining us. Okay, Beth, do you want to comment any more on that before we move ahead?
No, let's move ahead.
Okay. All right, Beth, this one's yours.
Great. So, we published a few months ago, but what have we learned since then? Because we've continued to do these webinars and talk to more people. And, both before and after, digital member experience is just a real big concern for association leaders. This is also another bullet below, but COVID has changed so many things, and probably COVID could apply to every single one of these bullets, because the digital member experience is just going to be different now. And so, and what that might mean now or 6 months from now is a concern for leaders, because it's going to continue to evolve. But because of that, and because it's changed sort of beyond just associations, boards are more convinced of the need for that investment. So your board members are working from home too, and have been impacted by COVID for their own business. So they're seeing the need for investing in in the digital experience. There's also a growing acceptance of the specialized solutions in the tech stack. So knowing that there is a specialized tool for analytics for association analytics, or knowing there's a specialized solution for event influencers, which I didn't know before this paper, knowing that there are things out there that can fit into your sort of stack is becoming more prevalent. So software lifespans shrinking. So it used to be 7 years is sort of where we were sort of looking at. Last time I put in an AMS solution, I swore, my coworkers swore they would never do one again, hoped that they would be retired, even though they were retiring quite a long ways out, because it's such an investment. But their lifespans are just shrinking. And because of the low code configuration, less customization, it can shrink, because you can sort of evolve sooner than 7 years. So back to that COVID, a year ago when we all pivoted for, all right, we just got to get something up. And we didn't sort of take the time to get something up the way we might want to, and it was good enough. And that was fine, because everyone sort of was in this sort of setting of, look, so much more accommodating and patient. And that patience has worn off, because whether or not it's because they've figured it out in their own business, or just they've been sort of doing homeschooling and locked in their house for a year, really what was good enough at the beginning of the COVID solutions really isn't going to work now. So that's evolved, and you need to find sort of good tech solutions. And what we've learned is that CRM platforms really need to belong in the discussion. And we've learned that in great part because I now work for a CRM platform since we wrote the paper. And so, Chris, if you want to head to the next slide. So where CRM platforms fit in the ecosystem. I think one of the big reasons why it wasn't included specifically, or at least called out specifically in the paper, is that, in my opinion, I think it fits in more than one space. So a CRM is often, is built on sort of a leading corporate platform. So Microsoft Dynamics and Salesforce are really where the CRMs are in the association space, but those are built out for the regular corporate world as well. And so it's built on this solution to sort of do this all in one. It's got power for automation and configuration and AI and reporting. And so it can kind of, if you want to, it can meet so many of your needs in sort of this all-in-one solution. But on the same hand, it has lots of integration capabilities, so it can fit on the other end of the spectrum with the hub. And so love your community, great, we can integrate it with it. Love your event management, great, we can integrate with it. And so the fact that, I think often of sort of switching your AMS and the fact that it is so, the last time we switched AMS, we did everything all at once, and that can be really sort of overwhelming. And there's a value in doing everything at once because you need to think of your data strategy and you need to sort of think of how your customer is sort of experienced, maybe not you want a unified shopping cart online and make sure that they can do everything sort of all at once. And so there's value and pros to doing sort of a switch all at once. But there's also sort of pros to maybe just switch one part of your component. And so that you can then, do your evolution in a sort of piecemeal way, so that your hub can sort of, I love my event management system. Maybe I'm going to love the event management system in the CRM too. I don't have the budget or the resources to do that conversion right now. So I want to integrate it. And maybe once I start using the CRM for other functionality, I'm going to see that I want to sort of move over more of it. So I do think that the CRM sort of fits on both ends of the spectrum. It doesn't matter where it fits on the spectrum because really what you need to do is find the right fit for you. And so Chris sort of pointed that out. The spectrum doesn't sort of, camera, wrong way. So it isn't sort of, this is the beginning and this is the end and you need to get to the end. You will find where you fit best on the spectrum. And this is really meant to sort of just give you sort of an idea of what might be out there, and where the questions you need to be asking. I will give one sort of pitch for CRMs that I don't think that we often think about, and that is the fact that it increases your hiring pool. So the fact that your system, the CRM you might be putting in is built on Microsoft or Salesforce, means there are more people who are familiar with that tool that you can sort of expand who your pool is that you're hiring from. It also makes you more marketable because you can upskill yourself and sort of understand those tools. And so I think that there's this little value add that I like to sort of pitch as far as like understanding your skill set. And that's one of the things that we don't talk about today, but we talk about in the paper is sort of upskilling and making sure that you're evolving just as much as your technology is.
Great. And I think that, maybe we're going to go ahead and tackle our last slide before the discussion, Beth. How about that? And we'll save all the conversation for the end.
Great. So we came up with 5 questions sort of to evaluate your transformation need. So if you feel stuck or if you feel like you're ready for a change, or whether or not you feel like you're ready or not, you need to change. What are some 5 basic questions that you sort of need to ask yourself to see if you sort of need to move along in the transformation? So do you have a holistic member view? So you don't want to have to go searching the different databases, or you don't want to go searching for knowing something about your member. When they call up or send you an email, you want to have this sort of complete view so that you know that they haven't called your customer care complaining about some issue last week, that you can sort of see this holistic view, or that you know what sections they belong to or what meetings they've attended. Having that view is really helpful. Are you executing repetitive manual paths? Customization was a bad word 10 years ago, and it's a bad word now. But configuration is really, I think, where the systems have moved. And so the fact that you can automate a task that you may have not been able to afford to automate before because it was too much customization allows you to focus on things that are not, that can't be automated. So, moving the mission of your association forward, engaging with your members, doing the exciting part of your job as opposed to the repetitive tasks that can be automated is what your system should be able to do. Are you providing a personalized Netflix experience? My queue is very different than your queue, I'm sure, unless you also watch a lot of Great British Bake Off and French comedies. And so people are expecting that. Associations don't have the budget of Netflix or Amazon, but you're going to hear that over and over, that you need to have those experiences. And I think that you don't need the Netflix budget to really leverage a lot of the functionality that's giving you personalized experiences now. And you really need to offer up some personalization in your member experience. Do you have confidence in your data and reporting? We've been talking about this a lot as far as how important data is. We talked to someone who just really didn't believe in their data and their membership numbers. And so how can you sort of plan and effectively sort of roll out any sort of programs or campaigns if you don't trust your data? So do you trust your data? Are you getting the reporting you need? Is it easy to get your report? Do you have to call up somebody and 5 days later you get the report designed you need, or maybe longer? And so do you have confidence in your reporting and data? And are you looking ahead with a plan for continuous improvement? So COVID caught, I don't mean to keep going back to it, but it caught everyone sort of off guard with how we needed to so quickly adapt. We don't know what the next COVID is. We don't need to know. We should just know that you should always be looking at ways to continuously improve and have systems that will improve with you and evolve with you. And so are you looking ahead with sort of the future of what your system should be, even if you don't know what that future is? So these 5 questions I think are really good to sort of evaluate your transformation needs.
So I'm going to ask the people that have stuck around with us to the very end here, and there are 38 of you. I think it's incredible. Thank you for staying with us, to lean in and tell me what's next on your Netflix queue. And I'm going to tell you that my next is not even in Netflix. On Wednesday, HBO Disney Plus is going to be launching the new Loki series.
Oh, well, that's next on my
number one. Yeah. So I will not be watching any baking shows or French comedies. So and Hannah says, I am correct with my answer. That's what I say. So please let me know what's next in your queue. And I'm going to also do a little bit of debate with Ashley. So Ashley says, look, I disagree. Custom can be really powerful if it's approached strategically and with a good partner. And Beth, she's responding to that comment that you said, which was custom's kind of a bad word in the past, and really we should be talking about configuration. But I'm going to point out an important nuance. So Beth, you were talking about customizing the application, talking about customizing the AMS, customizing the off-the-shelf solution. I believe what Ashley is talking about is creating a standalone custom application. So Beth, you are customizing, and
Correct.
Ashley's creating a custom app. So I'm going to tee that up and pass it back to you, Beth. What ideas do you have there?
So, every association thinks they're unique, and probably 90% of the stuff that they think they're unique about, some other association out there has that same need. So there is a sort of an opportunity to sort of really sort of investigate what's out there, because your uniqueness might not be quite as unique, but associations do have unique needs. And I mean, so if you are an association that really needs something that, does not fit in any other sort of spectrum out there or any other solution, and you want to partner with somebody to customize sort of this standalone functionality, that's great. I still think that you need to make sure it's integrated. I still think that it's important to make sure that it is truly unique to you, because you want to also stay on. So my concern with customizing a system that's already sort of out there is you really quickly get off an upgrade path. And from experience, I know that retrofitting is costly and time consuming, and you just put it off because you don't want to do the work. And so you don't want to do the work to do the retrofit. So then you're multiple versions behind on a system. So customizing an existing system, configuration can get you there, automation can get you there.
And custom apps could get you there.
Custom apps can get you there. So the custom app philosophy, to me, a unique association need. I don't know enough about sort of um, uh,
Ashley's.
Ashley's sort of scenario to really sort of weigh in heavily on that. I do think that that is different than the bad customization word that, from my experience, really sort of, I mean, we were multiple versions behind our AMS when I worked in IT because it was so costly to retrofit, because we had mistakenly made way too many customizations back in the day. But at the time, there weren't as many opportunities to configure. And so we were sort of forced to make all of those customizations. We would never, if I were still there, we would never do that again.
So we all make mistakes in the past. And I feel like if we could do a complete webinar on AMS and customization and all of the mistakes that you can make to pull you off of an upgrade path.
Well,
between the two of us, we've made all of them. Also, I'll let you know that Underground Railroad has been released on Amazon Prime. So this is a very popular choice among the attendees. And we got a question that I can't answer. And that is from Jarmila, who asks, if you have chapter memberships, which AMSs are you using that you're satisfied with? Beth is biased. I'm going to say that there's a reality about AMSs. Nobody is ever 100% happy with their AMS. So no matter which solution you provide or select, you should understand that there are always going to be challenges, that these are really complicated technical systems. So none of them work perfectly for your exact association needs. I have limited experience with chapters. And I think that chapters have a lot of variability in how they're executed. Beth, maybe you can comment on chapter membership. And I invite also the attendees to comment on this in the chat.
Sure. So I think right away, it's what's your definition of a chapter? So we come from an association that our chapters were sections because it was an area of interest. And in some cases, chapters might be sort of the comparable, but a chapter might be related to a geography or a professional, where you are in your professional career. And so what alone is your definition of chapter? Sometimes the systems will work for you and it's just a terminology issue. And sometimes it's that, and so you need to sort of go in sort of open-minded about that. But in a lot of ways, it's a chapter is this unique experience for you that the customizations to get you to your chapter, you might need to sort of think instead of like, all right, well, how can I reframe how we sort of set up the chapter? And so, you know, we come from an experience with sections, and the rules behind it were so convoluted in some ways, we really pushed back to change the rules.
So I think that's a key point. So I'm just going to ask you to repeat it, because it also goes to customization, configuration, and overall technical management. So would you say it again, Beth?
That they were so convoluted? Is that
not that part? What was your pushback?
So we pushed back and said, look, is this, in some cases, have we customized, or would we customize this because we're just doing it the way we've always done it? Is this still meeting the business need for your members? And for one reason, it was, well, that's how the old system made us do it because it wasn't customizable. So we had created this customization in the old, or we had created basically a configuration in the previous system that we were moving forward just because that was the way we had to design it in the system before. And we're like, well, can we push back here and rethink? And in some cases, yes, we could. In some cases, that meant going to the board. In some cases, that meant going, to an executive committee. And, with varying degrees of success, don't just assume that your business rules need to continue to configure or customize your CRM AMS solution.
So I think, first of all, I'm sure Ashley's head is exploding because you said custom like 300 times in that.
I'm so sorry, Ashley.
Just remember, we're not talking about custom apps. We're talking about customization of a software solution. And Beth, I think in a nutshell, what you're saying is, look, sometimes if you don't assume that customization of an existing solution is the answer, maybe sometimes the answer is change your processes, change your business rules. It might be the smarter approach, and wrestle it out with the team. And that's another reason to have a good cross-functional team where it's not just IT making these decisions. And Ashley says, like, she's smiling. She said, I'm not really, my head's not exploding. I'm following the conversation. All right. Well, I think that we have come towards the end of it. If there are no more questions from the attendees, and we appreciate everybody that came and joined us today, you will receive, we're going to go ahead and end the conversation. You will receive shortly an email that includes this recording, plus a PDF of the materials, plus the research report. And it will also have the contact information for Beth and for myself, and you can reach out to either one of us. We're always happy to talk, and we're both also always happy to learn. So if you feel like we've missed an element of the conversation, we'd like you to fill us in and tell us about how it's worked at your particular association. Beth, it was a pleasure to have you here. Would you like to say some parting words before we go?
So my personal bias, make sure you're keeping CRMs in your discussion, particularly Altai systems. But I do think that the paper talks about more things than what we've covered here that I think are important to sort of at least skim through. And I know everyone's days are busy, but I think the paper will sort of give you some more things to think about and to push back on us on.
Thanks so much, Beth. And thank you to the tens of attendees. We broke the 40 mark. And so I'm very happy with everybody that spent time with us today on what's probably a very busy week. We know it's the meeting season. So we appreciate you pulling a little bit of time to join us. Thanks, everybody. We'll let you say your thank yous and goodbyes on the way out. It was a pleasure to see you all. Bye, Hannah. Bye, Danielle. Bye, Padraig. Bye, Jason. Bye, Kenji. Good to see you, Kenji. Good to see you again. Bye, Kristen. Thanks, everybody. Bye, Lisa from Germany, and another Lisa. Bye, Christine. Thank you so much. And I think that probably, we still have some hangers on. They might be eating their sandwiches. They're trying to cram lunch in. There's Karen saying goodbye. Thanks, everybody. Hannah has a good question about the CAE credits. You'll get an email confirming your CAE credit before the end of today. Thanks for hanging in there. I'm glad you reminded us. All right. And I think that's probably the end of it. And thank you, Beth, for the time that you gave today as well.
Sure. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.